Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.
I'm Andrés Mejer. Thank you for listening in to the English segment of our radio show Para Ser Legal. What we're going to talk about now is what's the first thing that happens when you claim asylum. It's called the credible fear interview. So, non-citizens who attempt to enter the United States either with documentation like a visa or a green card holder or by using fake documents will be deported unless they say they're afraid to go to the home country. There's a process called expedited removal. It means that very quickly you don't even see a judge. Order of removal, boom, you're gone. You're put on a plane as soon as they get permission, travel document for you. Unless you're asked, are you afraid to go back to your country? And you say yes. If you say yes, you will then have a credible interview with an asylum officer. Now, typically they have to give you at least 48 hours to prepare unless you waive this requirement, and you can waive it, and I suggest you likely do because it could take weeks to get the hearing. Don't adjourn it unnecessarily. Now, officer will either be in person or via phone. Interpreter will either be in person or via phone. It really depends. There are some situations where both the officer and the interpreter are calling in by phone. Incredibly important that you understand what the interpreter is saying. If you're unclear about the interpreter, say so. They will get you another one. Look, I have clients whose first language is an indigenous language, Mayan, Aztec, what have you. It's not Spanish. In some cases, if they went to work and they really didn't have much of an education, they never learned how to speak Spanish properly. Getting a Spanish interpreter is of no use because they can't communicate. I have difficulty communicating with those clients. Even though I'm a fluent Spanish speaker, I don't speak their dialect. So usually we have to get a family or a relative that will help translate for us. So first matter, make sure you understand the interpreter. Then the first set of questions really talks about your background, your name, your date of birth, your home country, and any family ties to the U.S. Children, parents, spouse. They're seeing is there some avenue, basically should your family have filed for you already? That can give you a cleaner and easier avenue than asylum. Next set of questions talks about why you are afraid to go back to your home country and what's the basis for your fear. Remember, in the asylum context, 3 basic questions. 1, are you afraid to go back? Are you afraid of persecution? So they're going to want to know why. Did something bad happen to you previously that gives you a strong suspicion that if you go back, it'll happen again? Or what basis do you have to believe that bad stuff will happen to you? Someone came to your house, burned it down, killed 2 people, your relatives, and left a note saying, hey, you're next, buddy. Well, I'd be afraid. That's a pretty obvious sign. It's not always so clear. Why are you afraid? Did something happen? Or do you have a really good reason to suspect that something bad will happen? Second asylum question is, who are you afraid of? The government or a group the government can't control? And you'll be asked about, why do you fear persecution? You must have either been threatened or harmed because of race, ethnicity, religion, nationality, particular social group, or political opinion. It has to be one of those 5 protected grounds. Officer comes, so I'm afraid of the government. I'm afraid of the gangs. They are extorting me. How do I know? Well, they came with a police uniform, and the officer said, if you don't pay next time I'm walking out with your hand. So you're not just afraid of the gang, you're also afraid of the government, because that individual, well, he's a police officer, he works for the government. So it can become murky. Incredibly important that it is one of those 5 protected reasons, though. You will then be asked whether you faced torture or mistreatment by a government official. Now we're talking about, there's a law, Convention Against Torture. So it's separate than the asylum scenario. But if you are afraid, you have to express a reason. You'll then be asked disqualifying questions like, have you ever persecuted others? Have you committed a crime in another country? Are you associated with terrorists or groups accused of violence? So let's say you're a reformed gang member. When you were younger, they said either join or die, so you joined. A couple of years later, when they started asking you to do really bad stuff, you said, I can't do this, and you picked up and you left. Now, you go back, you're dead. You may have some tattoos, you may have some evidence of participation in gang-related activities. Well, the question then becomes, under the totality of circumstances, whether you deserve to get it. But they're still they still give you the opportunity to get in front of a judge. So, why are you afraid to go back? What's the basis for the persecution? Whether you'll face torture or mistreatment of government officials, and have you ever done certain things that could disqualify you? Lastly, you'll be given a short summary and asked if you have something to add. Make sure the summary is accurate. It isn't always accurate. You don't want them changing what you said. Officer will prepare a transcript and will then decide whether you show a significant possibility of being able to prove a case for asylum in front of an immigration judge. If they say yes, well, then, forgive me, the officer will provide the written decision and the transcript. If you're found credible, you'll be allowed to file for asylum. You'll be granted asylum. If you're not credible, you can either accept the decision and then you're deported, or you can request an immigration judge to review the decision. Always request the judge to review the decision. The officers are often wrong. Many a times we've had it. Don't believe that, look, nowadays they're trained, they have less training than ever before. The Trump administration wants Customs Border officials, not asylum officials, making those kind of decisions, which is absurd. They don't have the training or the qualifications, we know they don't have the education. We know they don't have the background. Now all of a sudden you're going to go to a course and you're going to be able to train, you're going to be able to determine who qualifies for asylum or not. They just wanted people to say no as quickly as possible. So, credible fear interview happens when you present yourselves at the border or when you're caught inside the U.S., whether you entered legally and overstayed, or you presented fake documents, or you entered legally in the United States. Either way, you're going to have a credible fear interview. It focuses on, it's by an asylum officer, and it's, do you have enough? Are you likely to be able to prove your case? If you're likely to prove your case, you're going to get the opportunity to file for asylum. If you're not, you're going to get deported unless you request a judge review it. Always request a judge review it. It is incredibly important that you speak to an immigration attorney before your interview. Very hard to do it afterwards. I've had too many clients that said they weren't afraid to go back to the country when they were. It must come from you. You, the immigrant, are the one that has to tell the officer that you're afraid. Your attorney doing it for you, they can honor it or not, but it's a battle, it's a challenge. I'd rather avoid it. Just tell them you're afraid, assuming that you are.